And we saw your African counterparts in the United States posing for a sort of class photo with President Trump. And I'll share a comment from a friend of mine who said that Captain Traoré would never have accepted that. Is that true?
A question regarding defense and security.
Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
Some of your critics regularly bring up a statement you made, and this statement dates back to the very beginning of your time in power, when you said that if everything was put in place, 3 months would be enough to move towards ending the war. These critics now say that 3 years later, the war is still not completely over. Mr. President, how do you respond to this tonight?
All right, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming to this interview. It's true, that's what we would have wished for, but things did not go as expected, and I said if everything was put in place. So, there are several approaches to implement in order to achieve this goal within the given time frame, but not everything was carried out as we had hoped. First, adversity. So, as soon as we came to power, we had hoped that we would be allowed to work quickly and make progress. Unfortunately, some people approached us and wanted us to go along with their agenda because their goal was not for the war to end so soon. I'm talking about certain foreign forces that were present on our soil. We had heated debates with diplomats from elsewhere on the matter, but no one wanted us to move toward ending this war. We understood this through their message. If people come to us and tell us that we have to accept that they support the terrorists while also supporting us, it means exactly what it sounds like. This is a war being deliberately maintained. So we quickly understood and got rid of all the forces that were present here, whether they were French forces, American forces, and we realized that the struggle would be tough. The second thing was also that we believed we at least had a minimum stock of weapons and ammunition. Today, I can tell you what I actually found in stock, for example. There was, for all of Burkina, less than 100,000 Kalashnikov rounds, and as for weapons, we barely had 100. How were we supposed to wage a war? We had to re-equip ourselves, reinforce the army in terms of personnel, weaponry, and everything else. That's why the 3-month objective, if this prerequisite had been met, would have been entirely possible, but there was nothing. We were not prepared for war, neither in terms of equipment nor in terms of manpower.
Precisely, Mr. President. As you just said, when you took power, if we want to put it bluntly, there were more men than ammunition in the Burkinabe army. And today, where do we stand with the armament program for that army? And what are the signs that it is gradually gaining strength?
Very well. As I said, I can't fully describe the situation as it was. It was catastrophic. And as I mentioned, you might be concerned. There may even be soldiers in this room who were on the front lines without weapons. That actually happened in our army. So these are situations where you might think it was just, I wouldn't say bad faith, but rather an incomprehensible situation. For us, the weapons were there, but they refused to equip us. But when we were confronted with reality, we quickly decided to first focus on arming the personnel who were present. And that's when it became the Banner Korea. Because many powerful countries refused to supply us with weapons. So we turned to those who were willing to supply us with weapons. Very quickly we equipped ourselves, we recruited the VDP, and we were able to pay for everything we needed. We developed an equipment plan for a build-up in strength. And as you can see, for the past 2 years now, the equipment has started to arrive. It's still not over. And more keeps coming in. Maybe in a few days, you'll see even more new equipment being presented, which is mainly support equipment. Because first, the infantry had to be equipped so that every man could be issued a weapon. That was a big challenge. We've achieved it. We're still recruiting, as you can see. Every year, between 10,000 and 15,000 men have been recruited. That was a considerable effort. Because no matter what anyone says, adversity is there. The number of terrorists is increasing because the imperialists are recruiting many mercenaries who come to Burkina Faso to fight. So we have to adapt to the situation. And now we've entered our third phase, which is no longer about buying, but about manufacturing ourselves. And we're also involved in that now. So that's what building up our strength means. It's important to equip ourselves properly, but also to create a defense industry. That's very important.
In a few months, or maybe a few years, our soldiers here will be using weapons made in Burkina.
Of course. We have the intellectual capacity. There are resources here, you just have to look for them. And that's it. We're right here at home. You'll see, you'll be recognized around the world.
Mr. President, in your opinion, can we win this war at this point in time? Are we going to win this war?
We can only win it. What else would we do? Rest assured, we're not going anywhere and we will win this war. I've told you, the threat keeps changing, but we are adapting. And the strength of the Burkinabe army was that it was one of the most resilient armies in the world. The pressure that Burkina faces, I don't think there's another country on this earth that faces such pressure. But we are holding on. We are fighting, and we are constantly adapting to the threat. And we understand where the threat is coming from. It's starting to show. That's the most important thing. And right now, I can assure you that soon we'll be talking about a black albino who will appear and you'll see. Don't ask me what that means. I think you'll understand later. The war will end, and very soon.
Precisely, to achieve victory in this war, you could say you need the necessary weapons, and you also need capable men, especially men with determination. As you know, that's the major game changer. That's what makes the difference in any war right now, at least as we speak. So what exactly is the morale of our troops on the ground?
You've really gotten to the heart of the problem. Human resources, determined men. It's not just about buying equipment, you need determined men. And if you notice, we are in the process of building a quality army. It's not uncommon that when it's judged that a unit leader or an element has failed their mission, they are dismissed and prosecuted. This has happened several times and it will continue to be that way. If you sign up to be in the military, you must accomplish the mission, because the mission is sacred to us. The other thing is that despite the pressure, despite the challenge, the men keep fighting and they are very resilient. If today you ask a soldier whether he would want others to come fight in his place or come help him, they will never tell you that. They would rather die. It's at this level that you judge their morale. They are ready, always ready despite the situation. No matter what battle we might lose, we will always hold the line. That's what's very important in the mindset of soldiers. So morale is at its peak. People didn't expect to have this level of equipment, but now they do, so they're giving it their all. And I can only congratulate and thank everyone who fought. Very important.
So, Mr. President, in your argument, when you talk about a war that is taking on a different form, that is evolving, we still wonder, we always ask ourselves this question: who is attacking Burkina, in what way?
It's not just terrorism. It's a war to seize our wealth and prevent us from developing. I once explained this in a speech, I think. I said that if we manage to properly exploit our subsoil, to process what we are extracting here, what we are producing, there will be unemployment over there, on their side. It's a battle. They plunder our wealth in order to survive. So it's a war for independence. We must wage this war to be fully independent and to decide on our own development, our own path. So that's what it's about right now.
Mr. President, you just said it. We're talking about security, about the defense of Burkina Faso. Let's talk about your personal security. You just mentioned it a moment ago. The pressure is enormous. It's immense. The danger comes from everywhere. Mr. President, just in 2025, there have been several coup attempts that were foiled. Mr. President, do you ever feel afraid?
Thank you. I think that's the only strength I have. I'm not afraid because I trust all of you. That's the first thing. You have to trust the people because it's the people who entrusted us with this mission, and I trust that they will understand. And that's why we don't hesitate to stand before the people to explain the situation to them and tell them what's going on. That helps maintain a very good relationship. That's the first thing. The second thing, as I said, is that there was a mindset that needed to be developed within our own forces. That's very important. Right now, with this mindset, people understand why they're fighting. If you look back a few years, many officers on the ground didn't know why they were fighting. But if we know why we're fighting, who we're up against, and why there's this pressure, people understand better. And that's why we immediately created the Institute, the higher military school, so that we could train our own soldiers and instill in them exactly what we want. Remember one thing, if you let your forces be trained by other powers, they will put into their heads whatever they want. They indoctrinate them as they please, and it's easier to manipulate them. Here in Burkina, that's actually what bothers many imperialist powers. They can't manage to infiltrate our army. All these units that have been created, all these men who are here, no one came from elsewhere to train them. We are built on our own field experience, and we trained them ourselves. I personally took part in training some of the forces at the very beginning, so that's already a second strength. Another strength is that if you have a mission and a goal for your country, you must not be afraid. If you're afraid, you hesitate. If you hesitate, you compromise. Once compromise sets in, you're done for.
Just now, you listed a number of factors that make you feel reassured. I insist because history matters too. It's history that guides us. The forces of the imperialists are real. In 1961, they were behind the downfall of Patrice Lumumba in the DRC. In 1972, they brought about the downfall of Kwame Nkrumah in another way. And then in 1987, they orchestrated the downfall of Thomas Sankara, again with internal enemies and sometimes with the complicity of certain neighbors. You know what they say, Mr. President? The first duty of a revolutionary is to stay alive in order to continue the struggle. Mr. President, can you reassure all these people, all these men and women here and elsewhere who are beginning to hope that you will stay alive?
They are always manipulating things from within. We are very much aware of that. And also, our second duty is to take part in our own security. Today is not the day to say that I am escaping from the state. So I don't just entrust security to others, everyone is involved, and I myself take part. That's why I say, it's not just a matter for those who are by my side, it's a matter for all the people. And security is not just a matter for those in uniform or for those who have the energy. It's a collective effort. It's also about behaviors, about ways of living. We need to avoid many things, perhaps mistakes that were made in the past. We have read a lot about all those involved in imperialism. At Hulapu, we learned many lessons. That's why we say we won't let things repeat themselves. We will anticipate. Even if people interpret it however they want, we will anticipate. But because we have understood the message, the hope that exists, we will do everything to always anticipate the actions of imperialism.
Mr. President, from the perspective of the journalist that I am, I feel that there is an encirclement of the IUS countries. When I look at the daily news, there is a foreign military camp near Mali and Burkina. Senegal is setting up units at the border with Mali, not to mention Benin as well, which borders Burkina and Niger. Mr. President, do you personally share this particular point of view? Do you see things this way?
I think that when you decide to make a revolution, you have to prepare yourself for this kind of adversity. It's only logical that they are encircling us. It's only logical that they're trying to bring us down. It's logical. As I said, it's a battle. They're fighting for their own interests. And it's up to us, if we've decided to make a revolution, to start everything anew, so that this encirclement can be overcome. You see, in Africa, we're used to not having a strong army to begin with. There is no state if there isn't a strong army. But well, that was the system. As I once told the others, they came to flatter us. No, you shouldn't arm yourselves. Even recently, I think there was an American general in an interview who said it again, that our countries don't need to be militarized. That's their way of thinking. We're like children. They're the ones who have to come and sit down to provide security for us. And many countries are in this situation. They don't build armies, and when a crisis comes, it's chaos. We, on the other hand, are building a strong army. That's why I say, we fight as Burkinabe, and we train as Burkinabe. That's very important. What was it like before? Every time, foreign forces, everyone would come to train your soldiers. They treated you like people who were worth nothing. Today, many foreign forces are looking to come and train with us. You wouldn't believe it. The greatest powers are seeking to come and train with our soldiers. But it's not just about training. They want to learn how we do things, how we operate, who trains us. But today, no one knows how the commandos are trained, how we train them, how we equip them. Why do we believe that others have to come and train us? They didn't create anything. They just thought things through. We have brains too. So we need a powerful army to face adversity. They will keep surrounding us because there will always be countries like that in Africa, heads of state like that, who will allow it because they have mixed interests. They always betray. They will always agree to let the imperialists come to their countries to attack their own brothers. If you accept the revolution, you have to embrace this concept. This will continue to exist. So we are nothing anymore. We deal with it, but it's up to us to prepare ourselves so that the encirclement becomes meaningless, so that they never manage to achieve their goal. That's all. So we deal with it.
Very recently, the Sister of Yao held a forum of the chiefs of staff of the African armies. Mali and Burkina Faso were not there, but Niger was, so there was a lack of solidarity. You who are at the top of the state, what can you tell us about this?
Well, it's not a lack of solidarity. Remember, it's a confederation. It's not a federation. In some respects, we do a lot of things in any case together. But in the Charter, it is stated that countries can decide on their relationships and what they can do. We can't tell a particular country not to collaborate with another country. No. We're not at that stage yet to begin with. We are currently consolidating the Confederation in many areas: development, defense, and diplomacy. And after that, we will move on to a federation. These are the steps. So Niger can participate in meetings. In the Confederation, we do not close ourselves off. We are open, we interact with everyone. We are very Pan-Africanist. We are truly open to integration and everything that comes with it, but with principles.
All right. There is a message about defense and security. We'll leave you with one last question.
Thank you, Sanyo. But the question I'm going to ask, forgive me. It may not be about defense or security, but about your relationship with us, the media. Mr. President, do you have a particular problem with the media, with us journalists? I said this because it seems there has been a misunderstanding, I don't know, with the national media, not the international media, some of which have ended up in the trash lately. That's a fact. There are no national media. It seems there was a misunderstanding at the beginning and that I am like a fog that is just there. How do you analyze the situation, Mr. President?
You know I'm not a hypocrite. There was a misunderstanding. There was some confusion at the start. But today I must say that I commend many media outlets for their professional work. We must avoid following the work of imperialism. Of course, many among you were trained by them. That's it. You went to the white man's school. They are the ones who trained you in journalism. So I don't often blame you when people try to behave like them. But I speak so that people become aware that this is about our homeland. Look this morning, for example, at the newspaper editorials in France. They might tell you that there is a mobilization to put pressure on the Prime Minister. They won't tell you that there is a march against the government or something like that. But if it were in Burkina, you would say that there is a march against the government. Do you understand? The French used to call us, and they still call us pusicias, these people. It's French. But the journalists also used to call us that for these people here. Why follow blindly? It's still slavery. Me, I want us to leave those people behind. Every institution fights for its own interests. Journalists fight for their own interests. So why shouldn't we fight for our own interests in Africa? So that's it. It's not just the journalists. I also blame certain intellectuals who appear on these Telan-Afrikosiek talk shows. When they speak, you ask yourself questions. But are they really Africans? Genetically, they don't speak with us. That's a reality. We need to decolonize our mindsets and our ways of doing things. Everyone must fight for their homeland. You might have information that is perhaps true and accurate. You decide not to release that information, because it could harm national defense, security, cohesion, and so on. That is a sovereign decision, because you want to protect your country. But we're not saying that as soon as there's information, it has to be released. No, that's not how it works. And very often, as we like to say, journalists aren't interested in trains that arrive on time. It's the trains that arrive on time. You know it, Mr.
President, so you understand our waiting times.
Yes, but that should be avoided. Now, I want you interested in trains that arrive on time.
All right. I'd like to leave you with a phrase that is the motto of a great European club. It's this one. Our jersey may be stained with blood, mud, and sweat, but never with shame. That's all I wish for you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you greatly.
We will now move on to the political and social section of this interview. And for that, we welcome Mathieu Somedat from Radio Burkina and Colette Kambari from Impact TV. Good evening, dear colleagues. You also have 20 minutes to engage in a discussion with the head of state on the topic of politics and society.
Excellent, Mr. President. September 30th, 2022, September 30th, 2025, soon 3 years of managing state power. What is your interim assessment in terms of implementing your vision and political direction through the progressive and propelled revolution?
It must be said that we took over the country with a certain situation in terms of security, but also with a different situation economically and politically. we realized after careful and thorough consideration that there were actually many reforms to be made. So many, in fact, that we couldn't possibly list them all at once, even if we tried. So as a result, we developed and adopted an ideology, a guiding set of principles that we began to implement gradually and systematically, the revolution, up until last April, when it was officially and formally proclaimed to everyone. And when we talk about revolutions, it means revolutionizing every aspect of our lives, because we can't keep doing the same things as before and expect different results. If we were just continuing as before, I think it would be better to let the politicians keep negotiating, but we wanted to break away from that. And breaking away requires a lot of commitment. Thank God the people have understood, people have realized that a break was necessary. Whether it's in terms of behavior and practices, in terms of governance, in terms of the economy, trade, and everything that goes along with it. And every day, I can tell you that we keep discovering more, because the system that was in place, and I like to use a caricature to say it's like a big knot we found, when you untie one, another appears. So there were many problems in our society that we are currently working to solve. And thank God I can say that many things have been initiated, and the results, for me, in any case, it's satisfying, even though I think we can still make more effort. That's it. And if you wish, you can ask me questions domain by domain, because there are many things that have been started.
Excellent. The revolution for progressives. There have certainly been explanations, but words that haven't really helped us understand more. What exactly is the content of this revolution?
The exact content, as I said once before, I won't say it. If you let everyone know the details of what you want to do, people can anticipate your actions. But we have some key points, that's it, the main points, so that people can understand where we're heading. So if you notice, even in the governance model itself, the fight against corruption and good governance, it starts with the example that the government must set. As I said, you can't be there, a certain category of Burkinabe, just because you've been entrusted with positions. For you, it's about choosing between fine whiskies and good champagne. While women are dying going to fetch water from the river, drowning for something, it's just not acceptable. So there is this mindset that we need to have in order to build a just society. Everyone should be able to have access, for example, to clean drinking water. You can't just eat whatever you want, choosing your meals, throwing away whatever you like in the trash, while others can't even have a single meal. That's what led us to launch initiatives in agriculture, for example, because the majority of our population works in agriculture. But for a long time, we realized that they are in deficit. It's not that our farmers are poor, it's not that they lack the ability to work. But they also needed that boost, which is what led us to create these initiatives. Today, I think what's most important for me is that when you go into the countryside and ask the farmers questions, they can honestly tell you that now they feel good about it. He farms, he has enough to feed himself, and the surplus he usually sells to the storage facility, which pays him and creates a security stockpile. And when, in certain areas or during certain periods, there are problems, they take it out and sell it at a well-subsidized price, making it accessible to everyone. So, that's very important. The ideology of revolutionizing a number of sectors, when you look at the area of public finances, for example, we're in the process of digitizing many aspects, though it's very challenging because people don't like it. Soon, for example, we're going to launch electronic invoicing. Already, when we introduced the idea, many major operators were opposed to it. Why don't they want transparency? Because people have gotten used to cheating, to stealing. It's like a norm. That's what has been established, so all of that needs to change. When it comes to infrastructure and many other things, the area of public contracts and everything related to it is actually the most corrupt sector. There you go, you're an entrepreneur, you come to see us, we give you the contract, you overcharge, and then we split something under the table. That's the golden rule. So when someone even comes with a different idea, you're automatically excluded, you're not allowed in. And if we let things continue like this, I don't think we'll ever get out of it. We wouldn't be able to pay for weapons because, as I said, if you don't achieve economies of scale, you can't equip yourself. You won't find a single bank in the world where you can go and get a loan to buy weapons. That doesn't exist. It's only with your own funds that you can equip yourself. In any case, we never had that opportunity. Here, maybe we have someone, we're interested. And everything we're acquiring, as I told you once about the amount, it's in the billions of dollars. How do we do it? Where did we get the money from? That money was there. It was necessary to clean up the financial sector, trade, and everything that goes with it. And the operation of our state-owned companies, you may have noticed this year, the 2024 results are beyond expectations. 2025 is even better than 2024. I'll take the hydrocarbon sector, where as early as 2023, we made tremendous progress. Before, it was state subsidies. That means we were still collecting taxes to subsidize the company, to pay the extra costs, to cover the shortfall and all that. But now the company is no longer in that situation. We have cleared all the company's debts, and now it's starting to make profits. It was because there was corruption in the sector. So there are so many situations, I can't list them all. So this sector also needs to be revolutionized through digitalization and everything that comes with modern administration. Everything is being digitalized so that people no longer have access to circulating cash and so that things are transparent. You, as the one requesting the service, know exactly what it corresponds to and where your money is going. The infrastructure, as you can also witness, is truly a crucial problem. We are in the process of revolutionizing everything. So it's this mindset of changing the paradigm, doing things we weren't used to doing. So understand that through this statement.
That's the encouragement, Mr. President. We've entered the progressive revolution and we're moving forward. But there's a segment of the population, the political class that used to be in charge before. What role can these politicians currently play in this revolution?
I'm not going to be hypocritical again. If it's that political mentality, they have no place in the revolution. It's the opposite. Look at how things were in Burkina. For 27 years, well, more than 27 years of wounds, and even under the MPP's rule, the same politics continued. And this politics, our generation was born into it. So we were born, and people grew up with a certain mentality. If you don't know someone, you can't access certain services, what we call deals. Everyone grew up with this mindset of deals, of corruption, of everything. It's dangerous, but it's politics that brought this about. Because there are political entrepreneurs, you've heard about that. Young people who rise up because they've been talked to, they've been flattered. And what was politics? What is politics in Africa? We have to tell the truth. Someone who has the art of lying, of deceiving, of flattering. You see, if you combine all the vices, you're a good politician. That's reality. And in our village, when we saw someone who was a deceiver, who didn't tell the truth, we would call him a politician. That's how we used to say it. So this mentality needs to change. Many have changed. Many have understood, have changed, and are walking with us. Now, those who want to remain stuck in the old political radicalism, they have no place. Let's not kid ourselves about that. Otherwise, who wasn't involved in politics in Burkina? But it's the same people. It's because we spoke, they understood, and through actions, they realized that people are starting to change their mindset. We want to change our mindset for good. No one thinks anymore that you have to belong to a certain party to benefit from a road, that you have to belong to a certain party to get a well. Everyone in Burkina should benefit from the blessings of Burkina's nature and the work of the government. So politics, as I was saying, it gives special advantages to one group while the other group gets nothing. So no, we need to put an end to that.
People even call us out saying, no, that guy used to be active in such and such party. I tell the young people, no, we're not here to divide, we're here to unite. As long as the person understands and wants to do the work the way we want, we put them in place. Just as there are also some whom we've given responsibilities and after 2 or 3 months, you saw that we had to look for them. Because if he comes and keeps wanting to do the same things he used to do, we'll come looking for you and you'll be punished. So what we want is a change in mentality. Everyone who changes their mindset is welcome on board. But if you want to keep operating like in the old politics, you have no place in the revolution. Your Excellencies, as you have said many times, order and discipline are necessary for the development of FASO. The retraining of young people has already begun. How can we involve other segments of society? There you go, very good. This program is a vast one that we did not want to go into detail about. But I mentioned it once during one of my interviews that there is a large-scale program underway. We have to start. Actually, young people are good, but they're not even our main target. It's the little ones. The little ones are our real target. After Sankara's death, as you know, all the daycare workers were sought out. Some of them even passed away, unfortunately, and the daycares were closed. Maybe it's the private sector that managed to open a few preschools and so on.
And well, school has become something else. You know, if you want a society that will be combative and competitive tomorrow, you have to invest in children. Today, I have separated the two ministries so that the Ministry of Basic Education can take this aspect into account. You see, we launched a lot of recruitment through the regular competitive exam for early childhood supervision, but we have just exceptionally launched recruitment again for those who have already been trained, whom we want to hire so that this year we can start a certain program. They are the target, and we will get there. We have a program so that we can start a certain patriotic and civic education at the level of the youngest children. And once that's instilled there, we will have good citizens tomorrow. We're also doing this with the youth. The high school graduates, we had them go through immersion. They were afraid at first, but I think they've understood a lot of things. They need to be more supportive, humble. They need to understand Burkina. Because someone who was born, in Ouaga 2000 here, he sleeps in whatever bed he wants. He even complains that the mattress isn't good enough. In the morning, he gets to choose whatever breakfast he wants. During immersion, he sleeps on the floor, on a mat. He'll understand that there are other Burkinabe who sleep on the floor. During immersion, he doesn't get to choose his breakfast. If there is any, there is. If there isn't any, he eats what everyone else eats. Already in his mind, he understands that there are two sides to Burkina Faso. And I said during immersion to be deprived. There will be days when they'll have 2 meals, days with 1 meal and days with no meals at all. I hope they did it. It's so that they understand life. We're young, but if we've reached this age and still haven't understood that there are different kinds of Burkinabe, that's dangerous. Young people need to understand that there are some who can't even afford a meal. And when he goes to bed hungry after a whole day without eating, do you really think that if tomorrow he's given a responsibility, he'll always have his mind on it? If I squander money while there are people who have nothing to eat, it's his conscience that will make him grow. So these are the trials we make them go through. I had planned for 45 days, but because of the registrations, I said to do 30 days. But for the next sessions, I hope we'll go for 45 days. So future high school graduates and private candidates need to prepare themselves to face this. And the program will continue to grow. This was the first experience. But we hope to be able to change even the mentality of the youth. Your Excellencies, in the Council of Ministers, the decision to reform the agrarian and land law, as well as the status of customary and traditional chiefs, was adopted. What are the motivations? The agrarian reform was necessary. You know how many conflicts have arisen over this issue of land. There are villages that have fought with machetes, families that have been divided because of land issues. The state must take responsibility. But if you hesitate, because you're afraid to declare it, that some people might feel frustrated or not, that's why the revolution is welcome. At some point, you have to decide to put an end to all this. How many real estate developers were there in Burkina in 2010? I don't think so. It wasn't even 20. Suddenly in 2015, there were more than 200. They bought up land everywhere. They're dividing it up. They sell, they resell, they've plundered the land, and it's dangerous. Right now, we have a C-card app that we've just launched. We're in the process of re-registering. But what's happening is terrible. Even plots in the cities, people sell and resell them to several different people because it wasn't digitized. It's a big register. Do you think someone can go through the registers, find the parcel number, and see who it belongs to? So you went and bought it, but it's not. So there are a lot of duplicates, and that creates conflicts. And while those politicians were doing that, they're out there at conferences and events. What social cohesion? You can't create social cohesion by dividing people over land. That's why we decided to take responsibility and put a stop to this massacre. The land belongs to the state. From now on, we will do everything we can to balance the situation as much as possible so that people don't feel wronged. It's the same for the customary chieftaincy. This law, it's been around for a long time, a very long time or so I've been told, but no one wants it. We have decided to get involved to take a closer look because as far as I'm concerned, the customary chieftaincy must be respected, must be listened to, and must be the ones working for social cohesion. When they speak, when there is a conflict, a contentious situation, they must speak in order to bring people together, and their voice must carry weight. So there are a certain number of privileges, if I can put it that way, that have been put in place, symbols of authority that have been established so that people respect them. Whether we experience them or not, we respect them. And they themselves command respect. Because lately, politicians had diverted them from their role. Many people today regret having marched alongside the politicians. There are villages where people are divided, where people no longer respect the chiefs. But with this law, in any case that we brought to the LTE, we tried to broaden many things so that their respect in society could be restored. And that's very important. Excellencies, with suspicions of community exaltation, how can we get Burkinabés to reconnect with core values such as solidarity? I think these values are coming back on their own. On the contrary, the war has also helped people understand many things, and people are starting to unite more. You know, social inequalities create more problems for social cohesion than terrorism does. There were too many social inequalities. I was telling some people, listen, you have eaten your fill. How are you going to sit down with someone who hasn't eaten at all and talk about social cohesion? It's not possible. It's the same situation I just mentioned to you. We must try as much as possible to bring people to a certain level as long as wealth is well distributed. That's the first step. When it comes to abuses and everything else, we need to be careful. There are a lot of people who have made allegations. Just recently, when we saw the case in Solenzo, they released images, talked and talked. We didn't say anything. We kept calm. When they finished talking, we showed the truth. The civilians who claimed that the forces had killed were actually transported here to Ouagadougou and put in safety. If they were killed, why are they in Ouagadougou? How did they end up in Ouagadougou? Often it's done on purpose. They make up whatever they want with their NGOs, their media and all that. But we let them be, and when they're done, we show the truth. Yes, the terrorists used civilians as human shields, but the forces were able to tell the difference. And after the fighting, they gathered civilians in Solenzo. We sent the necessary means to transport them here, and they were presented in front of everyone, hundreds of civilians, and they testified. So we need to be careful about the stories told by certain people who just want to push their own theories, and their goal is to divide us. But we must not fall into that trap. That's it. Excellencies, this year we have seen the important resumption of constructive social dialogue between the government and the unions after several years of interruption. What message does your government send with its social partners, knowing that the situation was tense between the government and the unions, just as it was tense between the government and the journalists? Everyone needs to understand that we must fight for our homeland. We made them understand that. You know, I spoke with the union leaders. I gathered them here, I spoke to them. They told me about our history, but I was disappointed afterwards. So I told them, either you are Burkinabé or you are not Burkinabé. So the standoff began. But afterwards we made a decision to meet with them again because we assumed they had understood the message. And even then, I won't lie, when they came, they still wanted to understand more and started showing certain behaviors, but the tactics we used, they don't work. The country is at war. We have to do everything for the country. That imported unionism. That's not real unionism. There are even some who boast about having taken part in Sankara's downfall, and they're the ones who started it all and so on. Do you really think that's a good thing? The Westerners manipulate you and you keep acting just the way they want you to. That's not unionism. Unionism is about fighting for the interests of the workers. But most of the time, what the leaders really want is to come and eat with those in power. And people say no. Listen, we have a lot of files on many countries, not just the unionists. In society, we have a lot of files. The people who approached us at the beginning, who wanted benefits, who wanted things we refused, who turned away, who left, who talked, we have their files. So, healthy unionism, there are many actions we've taken. We didn't wait for people to take to the streets to protest. When I spoke about daycare workers, it wasn't someone who came to tell us that there were workers who had been let go and needed to have their rights restored. We saw a case and decided that their rights needed to be restored. We told the finance ministers to find the necessary funds to resolve the issue. The people at City Hall, the Green Brigade, those who worked there, they had about 2 months of unpaid wages. It's for these people, those without work, so that people wouldn't have to fight for this before. No one came to us to tell us about it. The women sweep in front of my house, it was one of my men who brought it up once. They said it's been months like this with their work. I looked into it and I was told it was true. I said as soon as the country can, we need to make up for everything they've missed. Some of them had several months of back pay owed. We pulled out the files and decided to make up for all of that. So we need to practice unionism. If there's a problem, come to us and explain it to us. If we can solve it, we'll tell you we can do it. If we can't, we'll say, well, for now we can't, but we can do it in a certain amount of time. But if there's a problem, we gather the media and speak however we want. I hope they'll find the solution with you. Otherwise, if after that you don't come to us anymore, I want us to work in an African way. When there's a problem at home, we sit down, we talk, and we have to be truthful. That's what we can do. We have to say clearly that we can do this. What we can't do, we'll also tell you that we can't. Now, if you don't want to, then everyone does what they can. But we have to be responsible. There is no problem that can't be solved. And as I always say, act with the country's best interest in mind. That's very important. So we've resumed the dialogue just as we do with everyone. We haven't broken off dialogue with anyone. Everyone is here, welcome. Thank you very much, dear colleague. The allotted time for this segment has now come to an end, and in fact has even gone well over the originally planned limit. We sincerely thank you for this entire series of insightful and important questions dedicated to the political and social section of our discussion. Mr. President, the concerns related to the economy and development will be addressed by Soumaïla Rabo from Seven Media and Jean-Marie Taoué from Sidwaya Publishing. Good evening, dear colleagues. You also have 20 minutes to address the head of state.
Good evening, Mr. Mr. President, despite the security crisis and the international situation, the Burkinabe economy is doing well with a 1.5% increase in economic growth rate in 2024. We know that the improvement in the security situation has played a major role, but so have agriculture and the services sector. What is the government doing right now to allow the national economy to keep up this momentum?
All right, thank you. I see these are macroeconomic figures. We are aware of them and we constantly review the situation with the Minister of Finance. Efforts are being made. It's true that there are areas that have been secured which allow us to produce. And so agricultural production has increased significantly, which allows for processing within the small units we have, but also for exporting the surplus of certain products. So this contributes greatly to the trade balance. There is also the issue of mining itself. So there are a number of mines that had stopped operations, if you remember. Some stopped in 2020, others even in 2018, but they have also resumed operations. And all of this contributes to that growth. And we are continuing in this direction. And currently, if you look at the mining sector, for example, the government's approach is to exploit our gold ourselves. So there are mines that we have just regained control of, and we will continue to gradually take back control to co-exploit with the companies that are already there. Because what was the rule? Someone comes, gets the permit, exploits it, 10% goes to the government, and the rest is for them. And by the way, the 10% comes with no control. So now we are really taking back control to make sure we know what is coming out of our subsoil and also to take a significant share. So all of this contributes to economic growth. Given the initiatives we've launched in the agricultural sector, many other crops have been financed, and this is definitely enabling solid growth. But for me, what's most important is that when the Minister of Finance often brings the numbers, I say, well, that's very good, but I send someone to the market, you see, that's what we call an empamore. How much does a can of corn cost? How much does a can of millet cost? I gather the information, and if the price has gone down, we know there's an impact on the population. That's what's most important. So we do this work constantly, and even the intelligence services are involved, so that we don't just announce a macroeconomic figure showing 1.5% growth that actually has no impact, especially on the most vulnerable groups. So we will continue this progress, God willing.
Mr. President, if the goal is to further ease the burden on households and improve consumers' purchasing power, perhaps we should look at Sonabi, the National Burkinabe Hydrocarbons Company, which you found to be running a deficit at the end of 2022 and which is now practically flush with cash because it has become the champion among state-owned companies. That's half of the 2024 profits made by state-owned companies. Shouldn't we now lower the price of fuel?
All right, thank you. I think that's a question people might ask themselves. It's very good, we've made progress, but when did we break even and start making profits? What did we do? That's very important to understand. And the other thing is, doesn't this profit contribute to something else? For the benefit of the people. Let me give you an example. We are currently setting up road construction brigades in every region. Have you seen our road network? Even what already exists is in poor condition, even the RN1. If you go from here all the way to the Kokolowo area, it's completely deteriorated. That means we have a significant need for investment in the road infrastructure sector. And Sonabi must play a major role. I've just assigned it this new mission because the fuel that will supply the various brigades, even the bitumen and all that, Sonabi will have to take care of it. If we slow down, the pace will slow down. But do you want us to move quickly or not? And there's also a question of, I wouldn't call it a comparison. You see, fuel is cheaper in Burkina than in some coastal countries. We go get the fuel over there, transport it all the way to Burkina, but it's still cheaper compared to those cities. Can you explain that? If we were to raise it to their level, we would be doing a lot of walking, and I can even tell you that we could pave a lot more roads than we think. But we always keep it like this because we want to move quickly. Today, we really have to thank the people and friends of Burkina Faso. Many people are contributing, for example, in their own way, to beautify the cities, to build roads, and so on. At a certain point, the government also started by providing funding, but we will have to keep funding so that the pace continues. So it's a symbiosis between us and the people. And I think that if they understand the effort we're making, where their money is going, people need to realize that we can stay on this path. When we reach a certain goal, we'll be able to reduce it. That's only logical. No one wants to be rich and have their children live in poverty, if I can put it that way. So the wealth will be shared, but we are behind. And we have to catch up. Right now, for example, I was telling you that we can't keep paying for military equipment. We need to produce it ourselves. And to produce, you need to build factories. You can't go somewhere and ask those people for a loan to build a factory. No, no one is going to give you that. Even the equipment that makes up the factory itself, no one will sell it to you. So that's something we have to handle internally. There are many things we do, and you won't be given a loan for that. And look at all this equipment on a large scale. How many billions is it worth? It's not someone else's loan, it's taxpayers' money. So these are things we ourselves wanted in order to move quickly. Do you think that if I had a 200 billion loan in 2023, I would equip all of Burkina Faso in 2023? No one wants to give you loans for that kind of thing. So in the end, it's the people's money that equips the people. So there are many areas where we do it ourselves. So this requires at least a minimum of sacrifice. When we reach that level, don't be surprised. As soon as we feel that, yes, we can do it, we will do it.
Their excellence in the infrastructure sector with ONBia, Fasomebo, as well as in industries with Faso Kosam, the tomato factories, the SN company. In the mining sector, the state is becoming more and more involved. Isn't the state starting to take the place of the private sector?
That's a very good question. Well, you have to make a choice. That's one thing. And another thing, you shouldn't see it that way. The private sector still has its areas of activity. But you need to have the ability to adapt. There are things that should be handled by the state. But it used to be private again. Why is that? Well, we don't have elections to finance, and we don't have accounts to open elsewhere to secure anything. None of that interests us. So our relationship with the private sector is becoming healthier and healthier. Everyone does what they are supposed to do, pays the taxes they are supposed to pay. And we always tell them to adapt. When it comes to the mining sector, I gathered the operators and told them, invest in the mines. Many didn't understand. There is at least one who started investing, and I think I met with him recently and told him that I opened his eyes, that he didn't know there was money to be made there. For him, it was all about import-export. He says with import-export, all you're doing is sending our foreign currency out, and the people aren't working. That's just one example. So now he's starting to change a bit. The Minister of Agriculture, as you may recall, held sessions in Bobo, gathered economic operators and wanted to launch the fish farming hubs and all that to revive the activity, the offensive. But I can tell you today, no one has invested. I said, okay, I had the minister prepare a report on the offensive since we're in 2025. And regarding the share that the private sector was supposed to invest in our growth hubs, I asked which private investors had actually invested in land and all that. He said, no one. It's what was already in the products recently. This thing we've actually encouraged, the cooperatives, they're the ones who have continued. But the big operators, I told them, oh, there's no one. They said, all right, very well, but don't be surprised if tomorrow I say that no one will take money to bring to the ex-URA to pay income. You invest to grow rice. You have to know how to change. You have to know how to adapt to the ideology of those in power. So the private sector will always have something to do, but you have to adapt to the context. Because if we leave everything to the private sector, there won't be a country. That's what was already there. When you look at the CCVA, which one of you doesn't have a vehicle that gets inspected? Would you dare drive your car without an inspection? If you skip the technical inspection, the police will stop you. Who are the police? It's the people who pay. It's those who are mandated by the people to do this job. That's who the police are. If the police have to check vehicles to force you to get a technical inspection, and this organization belongs to a private entity, it was privatized. The money, I would say, is basically free. Privatized. Do you think that's normal? Sociocos was privatized. Many companies have been privatized. But this could bring in money for the state, and the state is supposed to work for everyone. If you privatize everything, then what do? Where does the state get its money from? We don't want to build our country. We just want to stay like this in what we already know. We want to build, we want to produce, we want everyone to live well and in peace. We want to see our children in different kinds of schools. We want our country to develop. And for that, the state must be responsible and take on its responsibilities in certain areas. Even the mining sector, we're in the process of buying it back. The first 2 mines that we decided to buy back, it's not that we took them away, we bought them back. You heard it's nearly 100 billion. But it was the state that paid to buy these mines. And now it's us who are operating them. And that's how we'll keep doing it. Even the shares I said we would take, we will buy back those shares. The state needs to be strong. If the state isn't strong, you don't have a country. That's something you shouldn't fool yourself about. Capitalism can only be ruthless. If you let capitalism develop to a certain level, in the end, you'll lose yourself. If you start an industry right away to manufacture, I don't know what, is it just to make a profit? At first, you might set up a factory that employs maybe 500 people. And gradually you automate. In the end, your factory only has 10 people left. There's already a computer doing the work, and the other 490 are unemployed. We're against this system. We regulate as well. Of course, things are digitalized, but we're against a certain level of automation. So we have an ideology that we will implement gradually, but people need to adapt to this ideology. It's for everyone's well-being. Otherwise, we'll end up in very uncomfortable situations.
Mr. President, does this mean that you are attacking the market economy, which is currently taught in economics and with which young economists are growing up? Because today the state is selling yogurt through Faso Kosam. You have announced the Faso yards. People are wondering when you will open the first stores. With all this, you are gradually taking the place of the private sector. We don't know when this will stop.
First of all, I told the Minister of Higher Education to change me. First, the university map has changed, but the curriculum has changed everything. Why do we absolutely have to learn their way of doing economics? Aren't we capable of creating? Is it God who has come down again, as I like to say? Create, bring people together, create the school. These are people who invented, who created concepts, and who created the school. It was human beings who created the school. So they set up programs and so on. The curriculum in the United States is different from the one in France, different from the one in England, and so on. Each has its own way of teaching its population to reach the desired level. So we too will create our own model. In fact, that's what is holding us back. Unfortunately, our school model is not good. We copied from others, adapted it, and in the end, what are we actually producing? Okay, we train a lot of economists with this concept. But does it work? Does it work? Okay, we're in the process of changing the system. Are we making progress or not? That's the question. That's the whole question. He talked about the ONBA, about those things. There were dams that had been damaged for decades, made of sand or whatever. This season, there's water in them. It's thanks to our system. When we manage to restore those dams, people can produce during the rainy season, they can produce all year round, and they're very happy. And they also have drinking water through ANEA, thanks to those dams for drinking. And we're going to keep going like this. Do we do this, or do we just sit back and say, no, everything should be for the private sector? And first of all, this issue of the private sector, there were people who had a backward, still political mentality. And we told people to change. You've seen the statements made by some ministers. Okay, we give you a project, you take the advance payment and everything, and then you do whatever you want. We give you a lowland development project, and in the contract, you're supposed to finish by May so that the farmers can access the lowland and start cultivating. You take your advance and wander around doing whatever you please. In April, we come by, we check, you haven't done anything, you say, no, you go at your own pace, that's just how it is. We force you, you finish the lowland project. There are some who work at night even now to meet the targets. It's not that they can't do it, but it's a mindset. And as long as the private sector has this mindset, it won't work. I told you that we are nearly 1,000 years behind. We have to catch up. We're still in the 1800s. We need to make up for lost time, but we can't keep going with this mindset. So we're encouraging people to change and adapt. You talk about yogurts, for example. Is the market already saturated? We import. I would like to see private companies get into the yogurt business so that we no longer have to import. We have put regulations in place stating that when something is produced in Burkina Faso, in order to import it, you need a special import authorization. This means you have to buy what is produced locally first. Only when there is a shortage are you then allowed to import. That's why you see so many private companies opening factories and all that. If we didn't use this method, nothing would get done. There's the big Faso mill in Bobo Dioulasso that we're currently restructuring. But at the same time, we've required the major importers to open mills as well. I myself attended an inauguration on the other side recently. He's one of the biggest importers. When we said we were going to suspend imports, he wasn't happy. He has everything here. We said that's what we're going to do. Either you adapt or the state will step in. They're doing it, but are we able to meet the demand? They do it, but are we able to meet the demand? There is room. We have the population, we have a large market, a huge market in Burkina and in Africa. But people lack the ability to adapt and produce. So there is always room. Don't think that we've necessarily taken the place of the private sector, no. Are you going to forget about the intermediaries? Yes, it's necessary to regulate, because there's this mentality of always encouraging speculation. Among certain people, no, that's dangerous. Recently you followed the case with the motorcycles. Unfortunately, it was only when the situation happened that we realized it wasn't even a regular market. So we quickly had to look at how we could regulate this market so that imports could be monitored. How can someone go to import motorcycles and tell you they don't have a purchase invoice? Since the ministry needs the purchase invoice to see everything you've paid in customs duties and so on, and you set a margin not to be exceeded. But they say they don't have an invoice, so they just go and pay. He comes, sets whatever price he wants, and resells to the public. So he gets richer while others get poorer. And generally when people get rich, what do? If they used to drink Burkina here, they don't drink Burkina anymore. Now they're after champagne. That's money flowing out. If they used to drive maybe a small car, now they're looking for a V8. The fuel that's subsidized by the state, again, that's money going out. No, we need to think about the economy. What are we doing? We shouldn't let foreign currency leave the country. You say you want the currency, and you want us to keep behaving like this? We can't keep acting this way. That's why the state is taking back control. If tomorrow people come to an agreement, we've been blackmailed. When we tried to tighten things up a bit at customs, some people told us that if we did that, there would be a rice shortage. They said, okay, go ahead and create a rice shortage. You'll see what we'll do. If tomorrow people want to collude to create a rice shortage, it's necessary for the state to take charge of rice imports. We're ready for anything. People need to change their mindset. Go easy, look out for your own interests, no matter how small, but allow other Burkinabés to live and don't impoverish them.
Mr. President, we saw you in Nambila with the women farmers. supporting them, standing by them. But beyond that, what are you doing to give more opportunities for women in Burkina to earn an income, who drive the small economy in neighborhoods and villages?
Very good, and that's one of the most important points. I even told the Ministry of Humanitarian Action, which deals with women's issues, to refocus its action, instead of being in welfare, to refocus its action on creating jobs and small businesses. Women have qualities. Look at the small-scale processing of our consumer products. Women can do it very well. They are much more patient than men. And they know how to do certain things better than men. We need to encourage them to do so. I myself went to Tenkodogo. I saw women who made the preferred couscous, which is good for strength, the liquid soap they make and all that. I gave instructions for us to buy the liquid soap from all these women who have been trained and who are managing to make liquid soap for our offices. Everything here is imported, even in your own offices. All the liquid soap is imported, isn't it? That's not right. While our mothers are making it themselves. And when I said to do it, at one point I thought, no, they don't have a formal structure. I said, I'm not going to get involved. Find a way, it's their soap, you pay, and you bring it in. Is it just a matter of packaging or what? Even if you bring it to my office in recycled jugs, in drinking water bottles, I'll use it. It's not a big deal. In the meantime, when we're still developing, if we want luxury, let's accept our realities, let's process what we need and consume that. And we'll progress little by little. A woman who can transform her business on a small scale, if we support her by giving her contracts and opportunities, tomorrow she could have a large company that produces and exports. That's the mindset we need to develop. So I told the ministry not to just focus on humanitarian action, on handouts, on assistance. No, we need to identify the problems women face. We have a lot of products that we're making today. We can process them, even on a small scale, and find a way to bring people together. I spoke with women in Bubu. For example, oilseed products. Women can produce crude oil through cooperatives and find people with a certain level of expertise to set up a refinery. And their role is to buy the crude and refined oils to provide perfect oil on the market. We need to move in that direction. But if we just sit back and say, well, I don't have the capacity to make oil and the refinery is expensive, not everyone has to build a refinery. But we can organize things so in many areas, that's what we're trying to develop. And allow women to really put into practice everything they know how to do. So it's a policy that's been set in motion, and I believe you'll see the results.
Your Excellencies, we now welcome Sekou Tangara from Africa Television and Abdou Zouré from Faso 7. They will be discussing with you topics related to diplomacy and the AES. Good evening, dear colleagues. So, you have 15 minutes for this segment.
Thank you, Sagnon. Mr. President, the Alliance of Sahel States is 2 years old. How is it doing today? What is its current state of health?
Thank you. I would say that the assessment of its health can be felt through the population. Through the people, I think it is doing well. Because the AS does not belong to the leaders, the AS belongs to the people. And the people have embraced it. That makes what is happening truly exceptional. The AES has managed to unite and bring the people closer together. And that is the most important thing. So we give thanks to God.
It's a 2-year-old child. It feels like the head is there, and so are the feet. But Mr. President, it seems like the arms are missing. Not there yet. We're talking about implementing agencies, about project owners. There was talk of transforming the Liptako Government Authority into an implementing agency. When will the people of the AES be able to see development projects, major projects that benefit the population?
Very well. I think this is a transformation that is currently underway. It's not final yet to begin with. There is still ongoing consideration because there is currently a provisional administrator in place. We need to think about how we can make it effective as an implementing agency. So it's a process of reflection that is still ongoing because we must avoid making the mistake of recreating the same institutions. If we model ourselves on the same institutions that failed, it won't work. And what kind of project do we want to carry out for the population? What did the LG do and what do we want now? What is the routine for certain implementing agencies or what? It's meeting with donors, gathering funding for projects. That means loans for the population. Is that what we want? I don't think so. We're starting from an endogenous question. If we talk about endogeneity, that's why the investment bank, if you notice, the levy is made so that we can supply the investment bank. If we want it to function, if it needs to carry out projects in the area, then the World Bank, it's financed in advance. But if it's just to set up an agency and then go back to the same imperialists to borrow money for certain projects for which they might not even share our vision, it's not so straightforward. So the discussion is still ongoing, nothing is final yet.
Mr. President, the AES is also about the fight against terrorism. Today, where do we stand with the joint force, and what fundamental actions have been taken on the ground?
So, regarding the joint force, we've set up the structure, as you have seen. The command post is established in Niamey. Currently, it's about equipping the first units. For example, in Burkina Faso, the first battalion is ready. The equipment for this battalion is also in place. And we are currently training the second battalion, which will be ready in a little over 2 months. And for each country, the concept is that each country, we order the equipment. We have established a standard set of equipment that each battalion must have. So we need to order them so we can arm them. And as I said, up to now, we do not manufacture certain types of equipment. We are forced to place orders, and you can see how crazy the world is. Everyone is preparing for war. You can order equipment today, and they tell you 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, sometimes even years. So we have to make do, and when it comes to the forces we are assembling, it requires communication. It's important you understand all the logistics involved in terms of communications behind this. It has to be perfect. That's why we don't rush things. Already there are many operations being carried out jointly. That's already the strength of the force. No matter what happens between Niger or on the Mali side, the force is already able to coordinate and work together. That's the most important thing.
When you look at it, to stay on the topic of the joint force, when you look at the picture of the AIS, the Confederation is surrounded by countries with which there are often diplomatic frictions. That is to say, when you look at Niger, there are frictions with Benin. Mali has frictions with Algeria. Burkina, even if it's not often mentioned, has minor frictions with Côte d'Ivoire. With Côte d'Ivoire, how can we turn these diplomatic frictions into an operational opportunity to fight terrorism, Mr. President?
That's precisely what I said. It is indeed about ISIS. If we truly know the significant threat that constantly surrounds us, the only real opportunity in this complex context is to diligently build very strong armies and strive to develop ourselves further. That's truly the only real opportunity we have. Otherwise, we will always inevitably face significant adversity. It's not just as you've mentioned. It's genuinely real. It's profoundly real. But what exactly can we really do about it? The problem in Africa very often is the leaders. These diplomatic frictions, it's not, I don't even like to say frictions between states. There aren't really frictions between the two countries or anything like that. The frictions are between the leaders of the countries.
Do the armies of these particular countries cooperate with each other? Do they actively share intelligence? Is there indeed significant collaboration among them?
Well, in some cases I don't know, but for example, if I take the case with Benin, we don't have the same approaches when it comes to terrorism. I'll take the case of Benin. Before I went to Moscow the last time, one day I was there and there was a threat looming over a detachment in Benin. The military doesn't wait to escalate things to the political level or anything like that for certain matters. They contacted our forces in the east who confirmed the threat, and they asked if we could do something about it. I was still there. It was a Saturday, I remember. And I ordered our aircraft to fly over and see what was happening because they had intercepted the communication about the gathering. Sure enough, the drones reached the border, and I saw that the terrorists were gathering not far from their base. We struck, we foiled the attack. It wasn't just once, it wasn't just twice. The forces intervened. That's the military spirit. A good soldier knows that the threat is, above all, a common threat. But now, as I said, at the leadership level, many haven't understood this. They're caught up in pointless wars, but the most important thing is the common threat. If anyone thinks they can escape this threat, they are mistaken. So we'd cut ties, the military would cut ties, as you said. You see, for example, us and the leaders, let's be honest, things aren't going well. But you must have noticed our soldiers very often still meet up, sit together at the border and talk. That's part of it. It's
the opportunity to talk about 6 elements of the DARA. Where do we stand? We heard the authorities during a press conference. They talked about it in terms of what they said.
What exactly did they say then? They crossed the border, they were apprehended, they're here.
each one.
Each time someone crosses the border, they come in, they take action, and these are usually civilians. What happens is they come in, ask questions, conduct investigations. This is actually espionage. It's logical. When they're arrested and questioned, it's just like before. There were gendarmes who crossed over armed. It happened twice. There were 6 and then 2 more in the meantime. We arrested them, took them all the way to Ouagadougou with their weapons and interrogated them. But one day, the Minister of Defense told me that they were supposed to be handed over to the authorities and that the arrangements had allowed them to be released. I met with the intelligence service and said, well, listen, if they didn't come in with bad intentions and all that, if it's just brotherhood in arms and so on, then they should be released. That same day, they were released. And we too were hoping that the Ivorians, since there are Burkinabe civilians in prison, would release them. Unfortunately, 2 or 3 days later, we learned that our brother had died in prison, and the others who are in prison are still in prison. And even if they are civilians, merchants, listen, this is not good collaboration. So, to be clear, we are waiting. We haven't received anything yet in terms of an approach or anything at all.
Yet the spokesperson for the Ivorian government indicated that they hope, well, that they are favoring the path of dialogue with Burkina Faso. He said it during a press briefing. So the guy who spoke...
We are not expecting anything. If we had favored the path of dialogue, we also hoped they would release our innocent civilians and come forward. But there was a death in their prison, which isn't even a conventional prison. So listen, everyone has to take responsibility for their actions. And we don't seem to be lying. What is real, we say it. We don't have people approaching us first. So the situation is just as it is. That's it.
The relationship between the IUS and South AO is clear. It is transparent. It's a break. We have questions regarding Louis Mois. Recently, during the conference of finance ministers of Louis Mois, it was supposed to be the Burkina Faso who would chair the ministers' conference. That was not the case. How was this issue addressed at the level of the Natizix Ministerial Council? The relations between the IUS and Southern O are clear. They are transparent. It's a complete break. We have questions regarding Louis Mois. Recently, during the conference of finance ministers of Louis Mois, there was talk that the Burkina Faso would preside over the conference of ministers. That was not the case. How was this issue addressed at the level of the College of Heads of State of the US? How do you interpret this?
No, it's not surprising. We were prepared for that. It's not surprising. There are people who claim to govern all of Africa in the US, and that doesn't work with us. It doesn't work. We told them clearly. I have people with certain heads of state.
Is there any reason to leave Louis Mois about the president?
Thanks to necessity, and maybe we're heading in that direction. If we can't govern, what do you want? They're after me. It was the same case when he gave in at the top. They give us a proper report. We're going to leave. So we watch them. The ball is in their court.
While preparing the show about the president, we learned that you like this phrase, everything is urgent. Within the IS, is there even more urgency, even in the prioritization of urgencies? What can we no longer live with today?
Are the emergencies ours in the IS? Yes, it's the security issue. That's the most urgent. And now comes the issue of development, which is linked to the security issue. We need to free our lands and secure our people. That is the absolute priority. So all our efforts, all our focus, even our daily tasks must be directed toward that. Every time there's an incident, as head of state, we must be informed, we must take an interest, we must find solutions and so on. That's what's most important. And to constantly think about it, reclaiming our land, securing it, making sure that even a certain situation never happens again.
For the president, the IUS is the same people, the same destiny. We are curious to know how the other IUS countries perceive the Burkinabe revolution.
Maybe they'll have their own revolution. It's a step forward. But you have to know that the Burkinabe is intrinsically revolutionary. It's the same people thanks to the mentality we've managed to instill. But fundamentally, you yourselves are Burkinabe. You know, it's not easy for us. The Burkinabe is intrinsically revolutionary, which makes the revolution easier to carry out. Even when we weren't making a revolution, people were already demanding one. So the others will surely proclaim it too, I hope. We have no choice but to make a revolution. It's our completely different concept. It won't work. We have to make a revolution.
Thank you for these various and thoughtful questions regarding the important matters of diplomacy and the International Union of States, or IUS. Mr. President, as we move forward, it is important to recognize that we are now approaching the conclusion of this September session. The fifth and final section of our agenda focuses on both regional and international geopolitics, providing us with an opportunity to reflect on the broader context and significance of our discussions. The related questions will be presented by Dieudonné Zungrana from Aujourd'hui au Faso and Jules Domsé from Vox Africa. You have 15 minutes for this section as well.
All right, excellent. Thank you. If you don't mind, let's start with Côte d'Ivoire as usual. Relations with this country are terrible, and with the direct and frank language of the soldier and revolutionary that you are, you have said that the reasons for this anger are not directed against the people. They see absolutely nothing at all, but it is specifically against the leaders who are responsible for providing shelter, protection, and ongoing support to those individuals and groups who are actively working to destabilize the nation of Burkina Faso. So under what specific conditions or circumstances could there possibly be a meeting, a discussion, or any form of exchange between the ambassadors representing the two countries?
It depends. In any case, we are not the ones who started this situation. I remember right at the very beginning, even on September 30th, wasn't one of the first people to call me President Sanotara. And after that, his younger brother came back twice saying, "We'll see," and so on. It's true. You could say the relationship was good, but he wanted us to follow a certain direction. But as you said, as revolutionaries, we know that's not why we're here. We were here for the revolution, and revolution means a break. We can't just follow a certain policy. So, little by little, the relationships between people gradually started to deteriorate, and as you noticed, all those individuals who perhaps wanted certain privileges, I think those who did not receive them, started turning against us. They were deployed over there, maintained, secured, and everything. We know what we're talking about because they also know what we're talking about when they act against us. There isn't any single individual who left Côte d'Ivoire and came here in his case. We observed for nearly 2 years. We spoke to them several times and they told us no, that we have to follow the rules, that justice has to issue warrants and all that. We did everything, but they don't respond. We have to follow proper procedures. The justice system needs to issue warrants and all that. We've done everything, but they don't respond.
Mr. President, I'd like to follow up on my colleague's question to stay on the topic of Côte d'Ivoire. As you know very well, Côte d'Ivoire has a presidential election this year in a few months. Is that something that interests you?
It does interest us, especially since we have a lot of compatriots in Côte d'Ivoire after all. And we're worried that there might be violence. And that's certainly not welcome. Because unfortunately, we've experienced violence in Côte d'Ivoire in past years with the Bairi operations. Everyone in Burkina went through that. Today, we really don't want there to be any violence.
Earlier, you seemed to say something. I'd like you to clarify because I think it's a rather sensitive issue. Are you suggesting that today Côte d'Ivoire is being used as a rear base by an organization aiming to destabilize Burkina Faso?
Yes, even more than that. A rear base for an organization working to destabilize Burkina? They are over there. Burkina's enemies are clearly there on display, protected. They are paid, they are protected, they are well housed. On top of that, there is the issue of terrorism. But no, powers float with terrorists. We must not lie to ourselves. Wait, do you really believe that maybe the Ivorian army is so overpowering that when the terrorists just see them, well listen, they shouldn't even be touched or anything? Do you believe that? They are so much more powerful than the 3 armies of the ES? This is crazy. There's a non-aggression pact. And when there is a non-aggression pact, you become a rear base. And all of this really worries me. If this country faces crises, it will be attacked by terrorists. Because if they no longer get what they used to, the countries would get irritated, the countries would get involved. It's a danger. That's why I kept telling the head of state, you don't make deals with terrorists.
So, Mr. President, what do you say to those who argue, well, geopolitics still matters with Côte d'Ivoire, this neighboring country which hosts the largest Burkinabe diaspora, while your critics accuse you of practicing muscle diplomacy with this country to the detriment, precisely, of our compatriots who are over there? What do you say to them?
Listen, Who says that? We are Burkinabe. That's what we know. And we have decided to make a revolution. We're going to do it. Now, whoever wants to join in, joins in. We cannot be in the midst of a revolution and want to pursue a different model of diplomacy. I told you about deceitful diplomacy and everything that comes with it. We're not ready to go down that path. If there's something wrong, let's have the courage to tell you that it's not right. We must not be hypocritical. Generally, people, when they're in front of microphones, say that everything is fine, but that's not true. Things are not going well. We need to have the courage to say it. We need to sit down, talk, and tell each other the truth. But if people don't want that, because in their minds it's just that these guys have to go. They don't want a revolution in West Africa. It's not going to work. So everyone should be ready to face the consequences of the situation.
To move away from Côte d'Ivoire, Mr. President, let's stay for a moment on the AES. You have certainly seen the latest poll conducted by our colleagues at Jeune Afrique, and with results that may seem surprising, the populations of the Francophone countries are all in favor of the AES. I would even say that Côte d'Ivoire at 66% appreciates what is being done at the AES level. So how do you receive this message?
Oh, really? I couldn't even follow that because I'm no longer a media person.
We are against a certain poll that they commissioned. Maybe they weren't expecting that result, but that's how it turned out. They went to Cameroon, they went to Senegal, they went to Benin, they went to Côte d'Ivoire. And over there, the people are all in favor of the AES and for the most part appreciate what is being done at the AES level.
It's logical, I would say. West African populations are most of the time connected. It's the same family. It was the colonizer who divided us. And when people see that we're trying to unite, it only inspires them. It can only bring joy. So it doesn't surprise me that these people appreciate it. What surprises me is they published it. Why did they publish it? This gives to think. You have no choice.
When you commission a survey, you're obliged to publish results.
Well, maybe that's it. But you have to be careful with these people because...
I completely agree with you. With your permission, God willing, I'd like to ask you a question. Specifically about your relations with another organization. What are you still doing in the African Union?
Good question. Well, I would say that our situation in the African Union is so passive that we end up getting passionate within the Union.
I totally agree with you. Otherwise,
it's normal, it's logical.
With your permission, Dieudonné, I'd like to ask you a question about your relationship with another organization. What are you still doing in the African Union?
Good question. So I said that our situation with the African Union is so passive that we don't even know if we're in the Union or not. We've been suspended for a while now and no one talks to us. It's really complete radio silence. So I don't even know if I'm in the Union or not.
But shouldn't we also make a statement by taking a historic step, as was done with ECOWAS, by slamming the door on an institution that clearly doesn't serve much purpose?
I had a discussion with a diplomat from that organization, and afterwards we experienced the appointment of a so-called mediator. The President of Burundi, who was even supposed to come here last week, I think, but then there was a scheduling issue with us and we're waiting for him. We want to hear from him because we ourselves want to know why he's behaving this way. Because we don't want to make a decision without knowing their motivation. Why did they decide to demand this from us? Why are they behaving like this towards us? If we know their motivation, then if we leave, we could explain to our people, here is what they said, here are the reasons, and so we decide to leave. It's the same thing as with ECOWAS. We left, but if someone asks us why we left, we can explain it to you. But today, if we leave the Union and we're asked, we don't know why they suspended us. Why are they behaving like this? Sure, they said that we did such and such, but as of today, I thought, You
can also leave because you feel that it's an organization that works against Africa's interests. I don't think the African Union can take a revolutionary stance like the one you're leading.
Out of respect for certain people, that's why, as the mediator who was appointed and who has already sent his envoy to get in touch with us, we are waiting for him. It's really out of respect for this president. We are waiting for him. Let him come, let him address the dispute, let him tell us what there is, and we will tell him the conclusions of our discussion.
Mr. President, let's move on to the Black Sea and Russia. So science is the art of these instruments. You have done scientific studies. So during one of your visits to Moscow, you asked the Kremlin leader to teach us how to fish instead of giving us fish, to transfer technology to us. Now, I think today everyone agrees that relying on outside support can no longer continue. So where do we stand today regarding this technology transfer? Because you mentioned right away to your colleagues that one day we will even manufacture our own weapons. So where are we currently with this technology transfer?
I think they have clearly received the message. I stated it openly in 2023 during the St. Petersburg summit. We were given wheat. We shouldn't have to go and ask for wheat again. We need to be able to do it ourselves. If we are given fish, we need to learn how to fish. I think that with the initiatives we are developing, we have asked Russia to offer a certain number of scholarships to students so they can go and learn science. They agreed. So there are already people who have gone to study in certain specialized fields. If you look at the creation of the Atomic Agency, we already have students whom we sent last year who are currently training in the atomic field, which is an advanced technology. We will continue to send more every year. So there are several other fields where we have requested training. It's not just Russia, it's the whole world. We've even requested specialized training from China and sent students there. We're going there as well. Basically, we're reaching out everywhere we can to develop technologies and send students for formal training.
So, geopolitically speaking, well, the captain president is going to betray me today and has put Bukinard into orbit just like in the old days. How does it feel today? For a country like Bukinard, a small captain, what does it mean for you politically to be at the pinnacle?
Do you
still have your head on your shoulders?
Absolutely, my head is still on my shoulders. It's a burden to see that it's a global mission that has been entrusted to us. To see that everyone is interested in Bukinard. I wouldn't call it pressure, but it is a burden. It's a responsibility. And we have to take it on with all the necessary focus. We don't have the right to fail. Whether we like it or not, we are going to follow the will of the people because they are the ones who have asserted this. So as you said, we've seen Bukinard in orbit and we are working to keep Bukinard on this trajectory. To be the country of upright men, to be the model country, to be the country that will move out of this underdeveloped situation, to become, in a few years, a highly developed country, to achieve a miracle, because that's what people truly aspire to. And also to be able to contribute our voice and everything we have for the happiness of the world, if I may say so.
Since you became head of state, you have traveled very little. The only country in Africa you have visited is probably Russia, if I'm not mistaken. And we've seen your counterparts. And we saw your African counterparts in the United States posing for a sort of class photo with President Trump. And I'll share a comment from a friend of mine who said that Captain Traoré would never have accepted that. Is that true?
Listen, I don't travel much anymore, as you mentioned. And I went to Russia twice for very specific purposes. It may be that I turn to other partners for very specific objectives. Other than that, I don't plan to travel around the world like others do. Because for me, you have to stay focused and work for your country. President Trump himself said, America first. It's America first. He works for the interests of Americans. So I work for the interests of Burkina Faso. If I have no interest there, what would I go there for?
So one of the major current geopolitical issues is, of course, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We see states taking a stronger and stronger stance. We've seen Western European states, to name them, say that they will recognize. And that's a strong signal, the Palestinian state. But as usual, Africa is almost silent. It is in a wait-and-see position. From Burkina, can you give a position that helps us understand a bit about what Africa thinks regarding what is happening today in the Gaza Strip?
I can't give you a position that shows what Africa thinks.
Certain matters. For certain African leaders?
Because many African leaders have a different way of seeing things. That's Africa's misfortune, if I may say so. We are not united. We don't see things the same way. Some are afraid, some are hesitant, some are there for the interests of other people. Listen, the West brought in people who grew up there, did everything there, and then made them heads of state in Africa. So they're the ones who control all of that. And so Africa can't have an opinion. But I know that deep down in each and every one of us, no one would want to see what's happening over there happen in their own country. But unfortunately, on the African continent, there's a similar situation in Congo. What are we even doing for Congo?
The Democratic Republic of Congo.
How many millions of deaths has it been, and for how long? We ourselves are at war. Have you seen any African countries even speak up for Burkina in the past 10 years? It's rare, it's rare. So Africans have this problem, while when someone in Europe sees they have a problem, everyone is united, people manage to quickly find solutions. It's the same in the United States. But Africa has this problem. You see, we've been fighting for 10 years. You haven't heard anyone raise Burkina's voice at the level of international institutions, nor Mali's, nor Niger's. Our people are dying, and it's not their problem. Congo is dying, and it's not our problem. Last time I tried in one of my speeches to speak out. How many millions of deaths has it been? Look at Sudan, see how they're tearing each other apart. There are so many conflicts on our... We're already struggling and we can't even make our own voices heard. So how are we going to speak up for others? So we Africans need to come together.
Can Burkina recognize a Palestinian state?